Greetings, listeners. Howard and I sat down with the managing partner of one of the UK's most distinctive independent law firms, fresh off of launching a bold 5-year strategy. We dig into why staying independent is now a competitive advantage, how 1,500 people shaped the plan, and leading through Brexit, COVID, and now AI without flinching. Enjoy. Welcome, everyone, to the Future is Bright podcast. My name is Chris Batz, and joined by my co-host, Howard Rosenberg. Howard and I are at the center of law firm talent and strategic growth here in New York City. Howard is a partner and the head of talent intelligence and acquisitions at Batz and Brunel, and I facilitate law firm mergers, private equity investments in law firms, and strategic growth at Columbus Street. And today, we have a very exciting guest, Roger Bull, managing partner of Burges Salmon. Roger, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Chris. It's a pleasure to be with you and Howard. So thank you for having me.
Roger, it's a delight to have you on the show. I know that you and your team and your firm just came off a real critical period of planning, and I believe that was a 5-year strategic planning process. Would love to hear from you some of the takeaways and a little bit about how you guys went about that process.
Yep, no, of course. So we launched a new 5-year strategy at the beginning of May. One of the things as a firm is that we consider that we have a number of areas in which we are truly distinctive in the market. One of those, which we are very proud of, is a way that we are people-centric as well as client-centric. So it's a good example how we went about the strategy in terms of giving an example of how we're people-centric. So the kickoff for our strategic review started about 14 months before we actually launched the strategy. And the first step of that was for myself as managing partner and our chief people officer. We held around about 25 listening sessions to which every single person in the firm, so that's about 1,500 people, was invited to. And those sessions each lasted about 90 minutes, and we were asking key question, which is, what do you think we have to address in our strategy? What are the key topics that you want to hear about in our strategy moving forwards? And we got a huge amount of fantastic data from those sessions, and we were able to collate that, identify themes from those discussions, and then feed those into the strategic review process driven by the partnership and by our strategic board over the next 12 months. We were also able to report back to our people as we went through that process, saying that, particular topic, sector focus, for example, that is going to be front and center. We'll give you some snippets on this, but we'll tell you more about it when we launch the strategy at our AGM in November, again, talking about the progress that was being made, whether it was about client centricity and key account programs, client listening, client experience. We were able to update on our thinking on topics that had been identified in those listening sessions. And then when we launched the strategy, we were able to say, you spoke about these topics, you will recognize, a significant number of these in the things that we're including within the strategy that we're now talking about. And we will continue to talk to you about these. So we will have touch points with you into the future where we hold ourselves to account as a leadership group. Are we delivering on these things? But we'll also continue to test them, evolve them, talk to you about whether they're working for the firm, for our clients, for you. And we will continue to assess that and monitor it as we go forward. So our people were absolutely front and center in terms of how we went about that strategic review process, which was fantastic.
So, Roger, I'm curious that, 5 years sounds like a luxury in this day and age. I mean, I just was wondering, did you and your leadership team ever have discussions? Maybe we should think about a 2.5 or a 3-year strategic plan, given Chris and I have seen the technology that's come into the industry, change within every 3 months, 6 months in a profound way. Just was wondering, as a leadership team, how do you address the time frame on a real value strategic plan that's going to move the firm forward?
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question and something we debated as well. I think it depends what you mean by having that 5-year strategic period. So for us, what it means is setting direction for that overarching 5-year period. So for example, looking at significant growth to double the size and scale of the firm in that period. That is an overarching longer term goal. Within that, So when we launched at the beginning of May, what we then set up was to make sure that every service line department, every sector group was sitting down with their teams to talk about translation of the higher level strategy into the business planning process for those teams. So asking questions, how are we going to deliver that longer term goals and objectives? What does that mean for our practice? And then breaking that down and saying at practice level, what does that mean then over the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? What are your actionable objectives in that period? So you've got some short-term goals, all driving towards a longer-term 5-year window, but they've got to contribute to that. But we recognise you have to have those shorter-term goals and objectives to make sense. Second part of that is we also recognise that that the strategy has to be reviewed. So that the piece where I was talking about feeding back to our people, with feedback to the partnership group, the board being responsible for strategic delivery and oversight. So we will be monitoring and auditing our own KPIs in terms of delivery of the strategy on an ongoing basis. We will be looking at that as a board on a very regular basis. If we see change, and there's bound to be significant change, there'll be things in 12 months, 36 months, 5 years, which we haven't foreseen or which we haven't got clarity on now. The flexibility is there for us to review it and say, okay, we went in direction A, we're going to move this to direction B. So we may still have the same overarching goals, but we're going to come at it from a different direction. Built into it, we would typically, and we did this in the last 5-year period, we had a root and branch review of the strategy at the halfway point. So after 2.5 years, we had a really deep dive on the key objectives, saying, are they still right? Let's test this, let's talk to our people, let's talk to our partners and leads across the business to make sure that those are still correct. And doing that and having the shorter term goals, having a midpoint review, but being also flexible and willing to review at any point in that 5-year period, I think is exactly what you need as a leader of the business at this point in time. So as you say, we are very aware that technology in particular is moving and changing at pace. There will be, as you say, as we have integrated and rolled out technology over the past 18 months, we see significant change, significant opportunity, different potential objectives. And therefore, it's having the governance to spot that, to identify it, and to feed that back into the strategy on a pretty much live basis as things evolve in the market.
Roger, you guys have a long history of being an independent law firm, and you haven't done sizable, if at all, mergers. I mean, a lot of the growth has been organic. You haven't been like others where they have taken private equity in your market. Is that the thought based on your 5-year planning going forward? Do you guys remain that?
Yes, very, very strongly distinctive and independent as a UK-focused firm. And again, we test that. So one of the first questions we asked ourselves as a leadership group and as a partner group is let's assess the competitive market that we're operating in. So where are we and where do we want to be? And you can break down that legal market into the sort of the truly global firms at very significant scale. So that's at one end of the market. You then have large international firms with a very significant international network, and they are looking up at those truly global firms and thinking, how do we catch those? You've then got the internationals, again, with a network of firms, fewer across different jurisdictions compared to the large internationals. And that large international group, it appears to me, are significantly distracted at the moment. They are thinking, do we need to do a US merger? Do we need to open in 5, 10, 15, 20 jurisdictions? Do the offices that we currently have in those other jurisdictions, are they aligned to our overarching strategy? Or are they a drag? Are they actually acting and pulling in a different direction? Do they provide a service to our clients that we think is fit for purpose in terms of what our client demand is and the client service is required moving forwards? And then you have the UK-focused group of high-quality independent firms, and that is an ever-diminishing group of truly quality firms in the UK, and we sit very proudly in that diminishing group of firms. We've got a very strong focus on UK. We have offices in Bristol, London, Edinburgh. We are distinctive. We're headquartered outside of London, but we have incredibly high quality people, as recognised by the directories and in the sectors in which we lead. And so that we think there is a really significant opportunity in the market as you have those other firms grappling with their own strategic problems and challenges. We see a laser focus on independence in the UK being the very best in the sectors we're driving in, stands apart. And then on the international side, again, we have a network of non-exclusive preferred firms. And we see this as a golden age of that network of firms that we operate with. So we're operating with really high quality, top of market firms across many jurisdictions across the world. It is incredibly flexible. So if we go to market, which we do, and we are sector led, and we want firms who are brilliant at energy and understand the energy market, for example, or brilliant at built environment and infrastructure projects or financial services. And we can mix and match the firms that the client need in a way that those with the networks find much harder. So come back to your questions. That is exactly where we position ourselves as a proudly independent UK focused firm.
So Roger, let me ask a follow-up question about that diminishing group of firms that you kind of mentioned. So like the firm has grown quite considerably over the last, it's been grown like 50% over the last 4 years. And I think you're at or near the 200 million pound threshold turnover. So, but like it can, and if you run the numbers and you look at the data, it would seem like every firm at this kind of trajectory faces the same fork in the road. Like, do you stay a premier regional firm or do you push for like a true national standing? So which is it, and does the partnership actually agree on the answer here?
Yeah, so partnership fully aligned, and we are a true national firm. So our coverage is across the UK, it's across all jurisdictions in the UK. So for American listeners, the UK being a very unusual market with England and Wales, some distinction within Wales and devolved powers with the Scottish market and with the Northern Irish market, we cover all of those. And our focus is on a nationwide basis. It's also international. So we have a significant element of our work comes through international inward referrals. So it's supporting international clients. It's supporting our firms within our network for their clients looking to invest into the UK with UK operations. So we have absolute unanimity from the partnership that is the right focus, and we think there are still very significant growth opportunities within that market to take us forward and to continue that growth rate. And we talking about doubling our growth rate over the past 5 years, actually is sort of about 85%. We think we can continue that and accelerate that by really focusing on what we are very good at, what the intersections are between the sectors where we lead. And by building those adjacencies out into the market, building on the fantastic foundations that we've got at the moment.
Roger, you've been at the firm for some time, and I believe you started in the mid-1990s, and you've evolved into what was the practice group leader of the employment law practice, I believe. And then you became managing partner. Did you believe or did you think that this was the role you were going to inherit it when you started at the firm?
No. No. So thank you for reminding me of my age in the mid-90s. Sounds like a terrible long time ago. So no, I think it's probably right to say I'm the first managing partner we've had who was trained at the firm. I think I'm about coming up to 32 years at the firm. I always enjoyed the law client contact. I think actually any managing partner who's going to lead a firm has to have had a real focus on clients and driving growth in their own practice. So I was very proud, humbled to have I think it was 7 or 8 years. I was a partner from 2003 in the employment team. I led the employment team from about 2011, and we delivered significant growth during that time. But I think what it does as a head of a department within the firm, it gives you a grounding in understanding what some of the levers are for growth, for looking, for example, at building out your client base, for aligning a service line alongside sectors where you can demonstrate your understanding of the client needs with that sector lens. So I was already there, I was doing that. And then you're broadening out those skills as managing partner to talk to your other heads of department, your heads of sector, to understand those different markets that we operate within. And one of the challenges, I think, is one of the super strengths and distinctive characteristics of the firm is that we do operate across a number of different sectors. And there are some fantastic synergies, but there are also some different market challenges and pressures and opportunities within those markets. And so part of the being part of the board, being a managing partner is understanding what they are. It's spotting where there are overlaps, it's spotting where there are opportunities, but it's also understanding the idiosyncrasies of the specific markets that you're operating in. And from a firm perspective, that breadth of practice and sector expertise does a couple of things. So one, it gives you great resilience. So I remember coming in 2018 when I became managing partner. And in terms of geopolitics and macroeconomics, I've had, along with any other managing partner over that eight and a half year period, some interesting challenges. So we started off in the UK with Brexit, and even though we were a couple of years after the referendum, we were still grappling very much with what does that mean for the UK as a market, its position in Europe and on a wider global stage. What does it mean for our practices? We then came into COVID and a couple of years of significant disruption and supporting clients to manage their way through that crisis and to manage the firm through that crisis. We then had geopolitical shocks in terms of war in Ukraine or in the Middle East. And we've had in the UK some issues to deal with in terms of impact on the budgets that have run through different governments and the impact on markets and the impact on our practices. So I remember my outgoing managing partner saying, it's lovely when you have a few years of stable growth in your markets, and I'm still waiting for those few years of stable growth. But I sort of recognize that that's the world we live in. So we're in a volatile, VUCA type world. And what you've got to build as a firm is that resilience and leaders who are able to pivot to react to those types of shocks, not look at those as huge threats, but to look at those as opportunities, either to support clients, to change direction, to identify counter-cyclical opportunities for growth within the teams, to build skill sets within your teams that can cope with that volatility. And I think we're very open and transparent about that. I think COVID taught leaders a real lesson in transparency to talk about those sorts of topics in an honest way. And I think that's been really valuable because you can talk about the direction of travel, you can talk about pivoting, you can talk about client support in a very open and transparent way once you've started doing that.
Roger, what was, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Sure. So Roger, I'm just curious, who inspired you to lead? Was your successor? Did you have people that you admired outside the profession or inside the profession? Who continues to inspire you? Or is it just innate? Is it your parents? Just curious.
I've always been interested in the business of law, how that works, how it fits, how you develop really close relationships with clients. And actually it's that relationship generation, finding the relationships, generating the relationships, minding the relationships long term that I've always been interested in. And hey presto, that's a significant part of managing a firm. As an employment lawyer, my practice was very focused on human emotion with a commercial overlay, and understanding people and getting the best out of people, both in our own practice, but also seeing that within clients. and talking to clients about those similar topics. And I think being in management, getting the best out of your people, working incredibly well collaboratively and collectively as a firm and as teams within that firm, to have the ability to pull together phenomenally brilliant people and get them pointing in the right direction and see them flower and flourish is incredibly rewarding. In terms of who inspired me, I think on the client side, I remember being a junior lawyer, being invited to a client meeting because I'd done a little piece of work for a particular client. And the client partner, who subsequently became our senior partner over a period of years, he led the discussion. I think there was probably about 3 partners, 7 or 8 attorneys, junior lawyers. And it was with the full board of the client, very large company. And the CEO of the client looked at him and said, right, before we get on to any of the work we're doing, any of the projects that are in the pipeline, I want to hear your thoughts about our market. So tell me your SWOT analysis of our market. Where are the opportunities? Where are the threats? Where can we expand? What are our competitors doing? What are you seeing out there? And the first 90 minutes of a 3-hour meeting were our partners, particularly led by this individual, talking to that client about their market and the things that he had analysed which were of value to that client. And I was about 2.5 years qualified, and that opened my eyes in a brilliant way. And I thought that's what you need to do. You have to understand your client. And I saw it in practice. And I was a convert instantly, having seen that. So that client piece and understanding your clients and then understanding how your firm sits and fits in that market has always interested me. My predecessor as managing partner, a chap called Peter Morris, was brilliant. Again, his balance of driving commercial growth, but understanding people and clients, I've always admired, and I aspired to that when I took it on.
And Roger, what was the motivating force behind being a lawyer? What drove you to become a lawyer, basically?
So in terms of becoming a lawyer, I think when I was at school, I was argumentative. I challenged the orthodoxy. Occasionally that got me into trouble. I enjoyed working with others. And I enjoyed in particular really analysing, getting to grips with subjects and understanding what directions I could go into. I also did debating. I don't know whether that's a US thing as well, but I remember I went to Montreal, age 16, to the World Debating Championships with the school and participated. And I think we got absolutely drubbed by a US school who was very good. I think we came 3rd in the world. And so when I was talking then about careers, I was actually a scientist at heart. I did science subjects between 16 and 18. And I wasn't sure whether I wanted to become a medic, a doctor. And I was talking to friends, family, and one of my neighbours was a partner in a law firm. So he was a private client partner. And he said, you're doing things which would provide the skill set to be a good lawyer. Have you thought about it? And then he said, I had to do a project for school in between the exam years, so age 17. And my neighbour said to me, why don't you come and sit in court with one of my partners and watch some criminal trials? And I went to court and I sat behind the barrister, counsel, and I had 3 fascinating criminal trials, which I was allowed to write up for this project. And the project was great, but I absolutely loved the topic. Then I found out a bit more, and I concluded I didn't want to be a criminal lawyer. I wanted to be a commercial lawyer working with clients and driving business and supporting businesses, which led me down the route of becoming a commercial lawyer. And then I read
how did you find Burges Salmon, or did Burges Salmon find you?
I found the firm. Interestingly, they're headquartered in Bristol. Where I grew up is not a million miles from this city. I was at Oxford. A lot of my friends went to the city. For family reasons, I wanted to stay relatively close to home. And I wanted a high quality firm who was doing really fantastic quality work with really good commercial clients. And there were a very small number of standout firms, and Burges Salmon was one of those. So it was very easy and quick for me when I was narrowing down my options as to where I wanted to apply for a training contract to put Burges Salmon top of my list. And thankfully, they made me an offer. So,
Fantastic.
Roger, kind of revisiting the strategic planning process you just went through in the next 5 years. I know you had defined, I think it was 85% growth was the target. How else do you know that you're succeeding, or it looks like success? I think in 2031 is that time frame. Yeah, how do you know if you achieved it?
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, in fact, we're sort of looking at growth, but we're looking, we set ourselves KPIs, and they may be across a host of different areas. So on revenue and profitability, there are obvious financial KPIs that as a leadership team, we will measure our performance against. We can break that down into different sectors and service lines. So what growth are we looking for? Making sure we're aligning business plans, looking at our growth in terms of partner numbers and headcount. So, we have an idea of what that looks like over the period, so we can track that. We look at our own headcount growth. Then you move on to other topics. So it might be, for example, skills, technology. So we have established a digital academy, and you will set up KPIs there in terms of what is delivered, how effective the topics and training that's been provided within the digital academy has been. You can do that and break it down and get to a granular level around that. On technology deployment and governance, you can set yourselves targets to say we need to have governance, effective governance in play, which addresses deployment, which addresses use, which addresses client liaison on the topic, which addresses work stream and revenue generation from the use of technology. You can look at efficiency. How's it used? How does it make people's lives better and more efficient? And you can set KPIs against all of those pillars of the strategy. And then you can check in on those on a very regular basis. And at board level, we'll do that at least 6 monthly. And within the owners of various strategic objectives and initiatives, they'll be doing that on a regular basis and then reporting back.
Roger, there's a lot of change taking place. We really haven't touched on AI. We haven't touched on private capital. There's a lot of things. What I want to ask you is, what is not changing in the next 5 or 6 years? And what are people missing with all this change, or any prediction you might have that might be helpful for leadership?
So what won't change is us being distinctive, being client focused and people focused. So ultimately, as a law firm, we are hugely people centric, whether that's with our clients and building those relationships, or with our people, upskilling them, supporting their career development, and being able to recruit and retain the best people we can. I mean, that is a virtuous circle in terms of make sure that we are able to bring in the best people to give them the most fulfilling career, and they will want to then do brilliant work with brilliant clients. So that's not going to change. Now, how we deliver our legal services, that may change. The use of tech, well, it will change. The use of technology will change the way that we look at that. In terms of clients being front and center, that won't change. So initiatives around client experience and how you improve client experience, persona mapping your clients, where are the pain points? How do we smooth those out? You may be using technology to assist with those. It may be people, it may be training. That will still be the same, being really focused on the service we deliver. Listening to our clients, listening to their challenges, understanding that. Not going and hard selling to clients, listening to what clients want and trying to identify in collaboration with them solutions about how we can support that and where the value is. And actually adding value, that goes hand in hand with deployment of AI and evolution of AI. So moving from the historic time and materials approach to where do you really genuinely add value to your clients? How can you do work in a different way? That might be in a better way. It might be in a more detailed way. It may be in a way that throws out and manages risk in a more comprehensive way so there aren't gaps for risks to fall through. It may be in a more effective and time-effective way. There's a variety of different ways that things, AI and technology will change the way we do things. Again, I come at this as an optimist in terms of saying I think the technology can be deployed and used and thought about in a different way. It's a shift in mindset for lawyers. And one of the things we're encouraging is, what does this mean? How are you going to use it? What are the different use cases that can be deployed here to help your clients, to help your people, to upskill people? And there are a host of different answers. It's a really exciting time. I genuinely think it's a very exciting time. It's daunting. Don't get me wrong. There are challenges ahead. But in terms of being in law firm leadership, it is really exciting. There's so much change ahead. And we thrive on change.
So Roger, I have just a last question here. In terms of like exciting things, going back to your strategic plan, just was wondering, because the way that you kind of canvassed the partnership over kind of an extended period of time, was there anything that was really surprising or shocking to you during that process? Is there one nugget that you kind of took away saying, I've talked to everyone in the firm, business services, the practice of law side. Was there anything that was really surprising to you as a leader of the firm?
I wouldn't say it was surprising. What I loved was the fact that our business service professionals and our lawyers were pulling in the same direction and talking about how do we deliver for our clients together and working together and coming up with initiatives where we add value together. So that was one. The second surprise, I think, was we're already market leading in the sectors we're operating in. We were challenging each other to go, where are the intersections and adjacencies? Are there opportunities? Have we exhausted what we can do? Here are there growth prospects, both within the existing sectors, but also to build out. And when you said, look, this is open book, we're not putting any limits around us. You think with permission to go away and look at those opportunities. And you thought, we may come back with a good number. We've come back with so many great ideas. And the challenge then is we've got to prioritize that. So the surprise was when you give the brilliant leaders permission to go and think about things in an entrepreneurial way, where are the growth opportunities? And you honestly and genuinely say, we want to hear those ideas. That's been brilliant, because then it throws up the challenge, right? Okay, we've got to prioritize that. We've got to select carefully. We've got to identify those where we get the right return, where they're going to be effective, taking into account where we are in the market, what our skill sets are. Can we be distinctive in those markets? Can we be market leading where we want to be? And then you prioritize and drill down and you invest in those areas.
Yeah, excellent. Roger, please finish this sentence. The future is bright because?
Because the people we have at our firm are fully behind the new strategy. Our teams are going to be driving that and implementing it, and they're going to be working with our clients and with each other to do that successfully. So really exciting to be at the start of that period.
Excellent. And Roger, how can people find you, contact you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. So if people have questions or want to contact me, please don't hesitate to make contact through LinkedIn.
Excellent. Roger, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for your time today.
Great having you.
No, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it.